Hi, everybody. Welcome to Bootleg BookTalks 2021 with Mrs. Porter. I wanted to start out the year by talking about the first few books I've read. I set a goal for myself to read 80 books this year. I made my goal of 75 last year with just about an hour and a half left in the year. And I thought, well, I'll up the ante this year, even though I came close to not making my goal last year. So far, I've read 3 books, and I'm on my fourth, and I'm hoping to keep knocking them out like that. So let's get started. First book I read is called The Deep, Dark, and Blue by Niki Smith. It's about twin brothers, Hawk and Grayson. They live in a make believe country. This is a fantasy, not graphic novel. And they live with their older cousin and their grandfather, and they're learning how to become benevolent rulers. Their grandfather is one of the people who runs the region they live in, and he is trying to teach them the right way to live. They are working on these lessons with their older cousin, and their other cousin, more distantly related, comes in. They haven't seen her in a long time. Hey, how are ya? She does not have the time of day for them. Just wants to see their grandfather. Okay, he's in there. When she goes in, they hear a commotion from the next room and they run in, and she has executed their grandfather. They're sort of in shock. Their older cousin goes to fight, tells them to run off, and they do. They don't know where to escape. Well, when Grayson and Hawk get to town, they find a great place to hide where nobody will discover their identity, might be in the Communion of Blue, which was a community of women and girls who basically become weavers of time, history, and fate. So they cut off their hair, they find dresses, and they disguise themselves as girls, 13-year-old boys, so it was kind of easy to pass. They settle into the communion, and Hawk is really having a hard time. He's Hannah now, but he's having a hard time disguising himself as a girl because he's very physical, always wants to fight, is bent on revenge and reclaiming their status. Grayson is quieter and just sort of takes it all in. He's a big thinker, and he doesn't really mind it there. So they both want to get revenge and um, sort of reclaim their family's place. But when they do, Grayson isn't sure he wants to go back there. So read Deep, Dark, and Blue. It is a great book. Fantasy is not usually the genre I pick to read, but I really, really enjoyed this one. Illustrations are fantastic. The next book is the newest Nathan Hale's Hazardous Tales. I just love these books. I used to teach history, so I admit, big time history geek right here. I've actually met Nathan Hale briefly at a conference, which was super cool. I have one of his, you see this thing in the little frame back here. It's one of his original um, pictures I bought from him after he had done the Lafayette story. This one, on the, just the surface level, appears to be about the revolution in Haiti. And I know you're asking, why is the Haitian Revolution in a U.S. history graphic novel? Well, the thing is, Napoleon and France were in charge of Haiti. There was a slave revolt there. It's causing all kinds of problems, as you will read about in the book. So there's action, adventure, all kinds of things. And Napoleon had actually wanted to use that as a way to gain footing in the United States because he had the Louisiana area that France owned, and this revolution has a huge impact on what he does with all of that land that he owns right next to the newly formed United States of America. So I know it doesn't seem like it, but it really is a US history graphic novel. As always, fantastic. Measuring Up is the third book I read, and the main character's name is Cece. She and her parents moved from Taiwan to the United States and settle in. She is having a pretty easy transition as far as language because she has taken English since first grade. A lot of foreign countries teach their students English starting at a really young age. But when she makes friends, she's a little bit nervous about having them come to her home and meet her parents, who have very traditional Taiwanese values, and the strange foods that they eat that are more typical of a Taiwanese family than an American family. And this is sort of based on the first day she unpacks her lunch at the lunch table, and the boys at the table immediately like, "Oh my gosh, what's that? It looked different, it smelled different." And after that day, she has learned how to cook American food, and Cece packs her lunch. Now, the other part of the story is she really, really misses her grandmother. Her grandmother was her primary caregiver back in Taiwan because her parents have very important jobs. They work long, long hours. And their grandmother couldn't get a green card to move to the United States. And Cece really misses her. And her grandmother doesn't have the means to pay for an airline ticket to come to the United States. And Cece finds out about a cooking contest, and she enters it in the hopes of winning the grand prize, which is $1,000, so she can bring her grandmother to the United States. And when she gets to the contest, she's very intimidated. There's this girl named Miranda there whose family owns a very well-known fancy restaurant, and it's really interesting to see how things sort of sift out between those two. Do not read this book when you are hungry, because it, you'll end up just dropping it and running into the kitchen for a snack. This is the book I'm currently reading, called Sheets, and it's by Brenna Thummler. The sequel is already out, called Delicates. The main character in this book is Marjorie Glatt. She's 13 years old, and due to a series of somewhat unfortunate happenings, she is trying to run her family's laundry business while also going to middle school. And middle school is hard enough without trying to run a family business with customers who can be snippy and people at school who can be judgy. And I have gotten to about page 30, and I'm just meeting the other main character. His name is Wendell. He is a ghost, and when I first see him, he is in his dead youth support group. And as you can see, the ghosts in this book are portrayed by what looks like sheets with holes cut out in them. And Wendell apparently decides to visit the laundry, and he fits right in, as you can see from the cover there. And he kind of wreaks a little bit of havoc. I don't know more about the story yet. I'm going to continue reading this, and maybe I'll let you know more about it next time. Thanks for coming to my Bootleg Book Talk. And if you want to see more of these, check us out on our YouTube channel. Bye.